Restore, restore the glory that we lost so long ago. Make us one in you, Gentile and Jew. Together we'll arise and reach out to all the nations, as we are one in you, Gentile and Jew. Today we're going to speak about Abraham. So first of all, welcome to Hebrón. For some of you, this is new. How many of you are here for the first time? Look at that, look at that. Do you know how important Hebrón is? Hebrón is the first title of our inheritance. In other words, it is the first place that was purchased by money by Abraham. Now you need to understand that when Yah gives us a promise, there is a price to pay. Some people think that, Yah gave a promise and we can go happy, go lucky to possess our promise, but it doesn't work that way. Can you say, it doesn't work that way? That's right. We need to always pay the price. You realize that Elohim showed up to Abraham already in Genesis 12, and we're going to talk about it. Genesis 15, Genesis 22, all these chapters, he definitely showed up and appeared and told him the promise. And we're going to see what the promise was, okay? But when it comes to finally executing, to be able to possess the inheritance, there is a price to pay. Can you give it to me again? There's a price to pay. So how does it start? I'm going to skip over Genesis 12, 15, 22. We may come back to it later. But right now I'm going to go to Genesis 23, the time when Sarah dies. Say with me, when Sarah dies. Interesting that Sarah dies exactly after Genesis 22. What happens in Genesis 22? Anybody remembers? What happens in Genesis 22? What happens?
Binding of Isaac.
Isaac is put on the altar where? On Mount Moriah. On Mount Moriah, which is the Temple Mount of today. Say with me, Mount Moriah is the Temple Mount. So, Abram hears from Yah a call to sacrifice his own son so that he can show him that he really loves him. Abram did not hesitate, takes him to Mount Moriah, ties him on the altar, and the Malach, the angel, comes down and said, Abraham, Abraham, do not touch the child. Do not harm the child. You remember that when Isaac asked him what's going to be the sacrifice, because he could see the wood, he could see the fire, but he could see the altar, but he could not see the sacrifice. And he says, Yahweh Yireh, or the Lord shall provide. Can you say it with me? Adonai shall provide. And indeed we know that later on he provided his own son as a substitution covenant. He provides so that but you need to understand the context of this. The context of this particular chapter is in the context of the promise of Elohim to Abraham, which is all about Israel and the nations. Israel, that will be like the sand on the seashore and the stars in heaven, and Abraham to become the father of many nations. So that was the context, and therefore it was satisfied with a covenant of substitution later on, about 2,000 years ago. Now, however, I'm not dealing with that chapter, I'm dealing with 23, when Sarah dies. Why am I dealing with 23 when Sarah dies? Because Sarah is the one, her death is the one that causes the inheritance to be possessed. And sometimes, we think, well, a terrible thing happened to Abraham. Right after he offers Isaac as a sacrifice, his wife dies. Right after he ratifies the covenant, he ratifies the promise, he goes through a tragedy. Are you with me what I'm telling you? And Sarah dies. But if Sarah would have not died, then we would have not been able to have what? Hebrón. And if we don't have Hebrón, we cannot possess the rest of the land. In other words, the key for the possession of the rest of the land starts with Hebrón, because it was the first place that Abraham bought with money, and so it connected promise and price. Can you say with me? Promise and price. And when these two are together and they are executed, then the inheritance can be possessed. Are you with me?
Yes.
I asked myself, though, how come that Sarah dies and is buried here in Hebrón, in the cave of Machpelah, the cave of multiplication. Interesting name, Machpelah, because the promise was that Adonai will multiply the seed of Abraham when he did not have even any yet. I mean, it was only Isaac at this point. He didn't have anything too big, just one son. Finally, the son was born. He will multiply the people of Abraham, eventually Isaac and Jacob, like the sand on the seashore and like the stars of heaven. It's interesting that the cave where Sarah is buried, and then eventually all our forefathers and mothers, besides Rachel, because she's buried in near Bethlehem, Ephrata, giving birth to Benjamin, she died, so of course she was buried another place. But that the cave itself where our forefathers and foremothers are buried is called the cave of multiplication. Isn't that prophetic? Very prophetic. Because you know Elohim is in charge of every detail of how his covenant promise comes to pass. I told you from the beginning of this tour and mission that we need to trust his sovereignty. Amen? We need to trust his leading. We need to trust his sovereignty. So, the cave of Machpelah, can you say Machpelah? Which is right here to my left. And in my back, when you went up those stairs, went in and visited the tombs of, let's help me, which tombs did you visit? Abraham. Did you visit Isaac? It's on the Muslim side. Those that went to the Muslim side, they visited Isaac too. Yaakov, Jacob, Sarah, Leah, Rivka, right? Rivka. And Rachel is where? Near Bethlehem, Ephrata, because she gave birth, to Benjamin, and then she died, so she was buried over there. So that is very profound, that the cave is called Machpelah. Can you say one more time, Machpelah? Declaring the prophetic word of the multiplication of the seed of Abraham. That it will go through Isaac. Because in Genesis 22, Elohim told Abraham, all the promise is going to go through Isaac, not through Ishmael, through Isaac. Even though Ishmael had been born too, previously to Isaac, but he will go through Isaac. And we need to understand that because all the conflict between the Muslims and the Jews is about, or the Arabs and the Jews really, is because of the seed. Does the promise to Abraham, go through Isaac, or does it go through Ishmael? So, what do we know according to the scriptures? It goes through Isaac. Say with me, through Isaac, not through Ishmael. If all the Arab world will understand this, then they can come to shalom. They can come to peace, because they will understand that they cannot oppose the living God. It's not about our political decisions, our important opinions. It's about what did Adonai say? What did he say? He said that clearly the seed and the promise of the seed will go through Isaac. That's what the scriptures tell us. It will go through Isaac, not through Ishmael. If this is understood, all wars are going to cease right now. That's as simple as it goes. We may talk more about this in a moment, and about the whole promise and what does he really promise to Abraham. But first I want to understand how come that Sarah dies right after Abram takes the son to Mount Moriah to bring him up as an offering before Yahweh. Why does she die right after? Well, you know, I'm a mother. If I would have heard that my husband would take my son to burn him as a burnt offering before Adonai, I think I would have been absolutely shocked. I believe that Sarah, who was a very natural woman, and we know that she was a natural woman and she was very, very practical, natural woman, when she heard what had happened, as much as she thought that was great and all of that, I think that her heart skipped a beat. Because if he did that, who knows what he can do next? This time Elohim stopped it, but who knows? I don't think that Abram told Sarah that she was going to take the boy. I personally believe that he probably just, you know, kind of snuck the boy out when Sarah was asleep very early in the morning, took him out just for an outing like any father would do and like he would do many times. The servants came so that it will not be too suspicious. And then at some point, Abram tells the servants, wait here while I go further. In other words, the servants didn't come with him so that they will not stop him. Abram made sure that the servants, and not his wife, not his servants, nobody can stop him, you know? Sometimes when Elohim tells us to do something really strange, something that we know that maybe our spouse will not understand, or maybe our servants will not understand, our assistants will not understand, then the best is that we do it alone. Are you listening to what I'm saying? The best is that we are discreet about it and we do it alone when we know that maybe the other part will not understand it. If Abram would have not done what he did, Yeshua would have not come. Because Abram needed to pay the price, needed to obey Yah to activate the fullness of the covenant. Say with me, obedience activates the fullness of the covenant. And that's right like that from the beginning, and that will be in every one of our lives. Obedience will always activate the fullness of the covenant. So, I believe that Sarah probably had a heart attack or whatever happened, but she died kind of right after. A chapter later, Sarah passes away and needs to be buried. We could say that's a tragedy, but we could also say that that's a blessing. Why? Because maybe she couldn't take it anymore. I mean, you know, her life was tough, very tough. She was barren until the age of 90. Finally, she gave her maidservant to Abram, and she had a son through the maidservant. That was Ishmael. That Hagar and that Ishmael contested the position of Isaac. And not only that, but if we really think about it, she went through a lot more things. She was about 65 years of age when she left Haran, Ur of the Chaldees, or Haran. And, you know, she was a beautiful woman. And Abram was so afraid that on the way, the kings of the different parts where he was passing will attack him, will kill him on behalf of his wife because she was so beautiful, and they would take her and kill him. And that he actually asked her to take a very, very precarious role. And the role was, tell them you are my sister, which it was a half-truth because she was his sister from the side of one of the parents, but she was his wife. And so she actually was always being put in a precarious position. She could have been raped by the king of Egypt, for example. She could have been raped. But praise Yah, that Yah always protected Sarah. Can you say with me? Yah always protected Sarah. Yah is faithful to his vessels. He knows the hardship the vessels need to go through. So he's faithful to his vessels. But I believe that personally, Sarah, kind of like Moses, came to the end of what they could take. Why do I think that Moses came to the end of what he could take? Because Moses died or passed away across Sukkot Yehoshua in Beit Hogla, in ancient Gilgal, in Mount Nebo. He just went up, took a look at the land, but Adonai said, I'm going to take you this day, and you're not going to be able to cross the Jordan. And this happened, why? Because at one point, a little bit earlier, Moses had lost it. He had lost his temper. How did he lose his temper? Yahweh told him to speak to the rock, to give water to the people, but Moshe struck the rock and waters came out, defying the word of Adonai and actually defying in public what Yahweh had told him. Why? Because he was angry with the children of Israel, because we were so stiff-necked and so complaining. Anybody could have lost it. Can you say that? Anybody could have lost it. But to whom much is given, much is required. And therefore, it says, not many be teachers, for we are going to be judged more severely. Am I quoting? Yes, not many be teachers, for we'll be judged more severely. That means that we have to watch out when we've grown weary of the people, weary of the betrayals, weary of the hardship, weary of the challenges, that we do not lose our temper in public. This was about in public, because when we lose our temper in public and we do not obey in public the word that Yah gave us, then we actually make him ashamed. We bring shame to the name of Yahweh. Are you with me? Yes. This is about the public part. I'm sure that Moses had his moments in private, and even had his moments with Elohim himself and talked to him with Yahweh himself. But this was in public. He could not restrain himself. He did not have the self-control anymore because he had grown weary. And I believe that because Yah is merciful, he said, Moses, you're not going to cross over because you've had it. Can you say with me, you've had it? So he took him and he transferred the power to Yehoshua, to Joshua, where we are positioned right now in ancient Gilgal, in Sukkot Yehoshua, where the angel showed up and the tribes crossed by. I believe that Sarah had the same situation. I believe she's had it. And I believe that therefore Yah took a look at that and took her home. Amen? He just took her home. And so, however, how tragic as this may be for Abraham, because that's the wife of his bosom, that's the one he loved from the beginning, and yet it was a blessing. And often, you know, when Yah takes home someone we really love, because I believe they've had it. I believe he took Yuval because he's had it. And yes, he was young, but he'd had it. And I believe that's it. That's as much as it could go. And so, even when it takes somebody, when they've had it, it's a blessing. Why is it a blessing? Though it's a tragedy, though he was weeping and mourning the death of Sarah, it's because it allows for the opportunity of something new to come up. Can you say something new? Whatever bereavement you're going through, remember Abraham. It gave them the opportunity of something new to come up. What come up is what we read about in Genesis 23 and later on in Genesis 25. Because it is, the new thing is that he bought the field, the cave, the trees, and everything that was in Hebrón, so that it became de facto, as a fact, forever, legally, the inheritance of Israel. Say de facto, forever, legally, the inheritance of Israel. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's the first thing. The second thing, and we may talk about it later on, is that he got to remarry. And he married a lady by the name of Keturah and had a slew of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Sarah only gave him Isaac. There was absolutely not one more besides Isaac. She wasn't pregnant again after Isaac. And so, Yah fulfilled the promise, even through Keturah, not the fullness of the promise, because the fullness of the promise only goes through Isaac. And even Abraham gave only the inheritance and the portions to Isaac. He gave portions to the other children and sent them eastward. Where did they go? Eastward. Who lives eastward? Who lives eastward? All the way to India. All the way for the Far East. How many of you are in the Far East? Lift up your hands. When you're in the Far East, you know what? Chances are that you have some children of Keturah over there. Amen? And they arrived to India, they arrived to different parts in the Far East as well. He gave portion to the children, and then, but he gave the full inheritance only to Yitzchak, to Isaac. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes. Do you get me thus far? Because if we understand this history, we'll understand a lot of things. So he could multiply and he could become the father of many nations, right? The father of many nations. He's the father of the Ishmaelite nation. He is the father of Keturah's children, right? So he's the father of many nations. So let's take a look now how Sarah becomes a blessing for the possession of the inheritance. Had she not died, we wouldn't have Hebrón. And Sarah died at Kiryat Arba, that is Hebrón. Can you say Kiryat Arba? Yeah, you know why Kiryat Arba is called Kiryat Arba? Today we have a new settlement called Kiryat Arba near Hebrón. But why Kiryat Arba is Hebrón? Remember when Caleb came in with Joshua and he said, give me that mountain. What mountain was that? Kiryat Arba, which is Hebrón. What does Kiryat Arba mean? The village of the four. And who were these four? Anybody knows what they were? Giants. They were giants. They were mixed hybrid seed. Remember I talked about the Nephilim, the Zamzumim, the Rephaim, the Anakim, and all of those? That they had often six fingers, 6 toes, yes? So we are dealing here with mixed seed. We are dealing here with hybrid seed. We talked when we were in the Banyas. We talked in that place how the happening of Genesis 6 happened there between the fallen angels that mated with the daughters of men, probably Cain, according to the book of Enoch, it was the daughters of Cain. And we talked about that even after Genesis 11, when there was this rebellion by Nimrod, that means let us rebel, and all of the people just gathered together and they decided to build up a tower to reach up the third heavens, to climb up to God. The purpose was to dethrone Elohim. It wasn't because they wanted to worship him. It was because they wanted to dethrone him and forever establish that it will be Lucifer who will be on the throne. You understand what I'm saying? Therefore, after Genesis 11, we still have this. They stopped building the tower, but we still see the happenings of Nephilim. We still have the happenings of men of renown like Nimrod, who probably was a mixed breed as well between fallen angels and the daughters of men. And so even after the flood, these happenings continue to happen. And they may be happening today as well, through all kinds of portals where they come up and down. The fallen angels come up and down, like in the plays, remember, in Caesarea and Caesarea, where I showed you that when the Romans had plays, then they had on the stage underground, and there are 2 holes from where the gods will come up and down and mingle with mankind. They may be doing it from up, or they may be doing from the underworld, and they may be coming up and down, mingling with the daughters of men, creating mixed breed. I know that for many of you that is new, but there are some people that have no forgiveness. Why did Elohim say to Amalek that he will blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven? Why? Because they have no forgiveness. Amalek has no forgiveness. Can you say this with me? I don't care how much you preach the gospel to Amalek. It has no forgiveness. And so, who is Amalek, for example? Amalek is the grandson of who? Esau. Who did Esau who did Esau make Amalek with? Who did he, bear Amalek with? With who? Well, actually Esau had a son. The son was Eliphaz. And Eliphaz had a Canaanite woman, Timnah. And with Timnah, they made Amalek. What did Elohim say about all the people and the inhabitants of Canaan? Do not leave anyone alive. Do not leave men, do not leave women, and especially not women that have known men. Why do you think that he said do not leave men, do not leave women, nobody alive, because he's so cruel? No, it's because Canaan was full of mixed breed. Can you say with me? Canaan was full of mixed breed. Therefore, we had so many giants in the land. And do you understand what I just said? Yes. I explained to you the picture. Now, when you read the Bible, you'll never read it again. You will understand where it says giant. Many people go and think it's an allegory. It's not an allegory. There were mixed breeds, periods, people that were super strong, people that were super big. Goliath was one of them, right? People that were super strong, super big, people that were scary, okay? People that could do feats, could lift up tremendous amount of weight, okay? We're talking about these. And so when, at the first time, the first 12 that came here to tour the land, sent by Moses, came back scared, only 2 survived and were not scared. What's the name of those 2? Yehoshua and Caleb, right? Yehoshua and Caleb, Joshua and Caleb. So our praise tabernacle and our sukkah is called Sukkot Yehoshua in that place. Yehoshua and Caleb. And Caleb, they were the only ones that survived from their generation. Everyone else died in the desert. So now when Caleb comes here to this area, what does he say? He said, give me that mountain. Kiryat Arba. Because there were 4 giants that were the rulers of this area. And when Caleb saw the giants and saw they were the rulers of this area, he got excited.
Every places we visited, the Torah came alive. We have been connected to Israel. Yahweh promised, whoever will bless Israel, he will bless. Whoever will curse Israel, he will curse. This is just amazing. Israel is Yah's firstborn son, and nothing changes. He will defend Israel. Even in this war, he will defend Israel and deliver them.
Amen. For the key of Abraham has been given to mankind, and the key of Abraham opens all doors. For the key of Abraham has been given